Okay, last time we got we got our app to display data in the details view, but now of course we need to reverse that process so that if we make any changes here, we want them going back. In Unit 5, I showed you how to remove this segue, this pop segue, and replace it with a modal segue. And then we created a custom dismiss segue class so that we could have a save and cancel button up here that then navigated back to this one. And I was listening to my recordings from last year, and I did it a different way there, and I wonder if it worked here. Tried it, and it worked. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep our pop segue, and we're going to write one line of code that's attached to our save and cancel buttons that sends us back, but we're not going to have any segues. Just a quick discussion, I did this last year. Many of you have maybe not heard of stacks and queues. A stack is, think of a stack of plates. And last year, if John Dunn were here, I'd be talking more to him. Last year, I was also talking about an ammunition magazine. When you fill a stack of plates in a cafeteria, you put a stack in, and the last plate that went in is the first one to come out. Same thing, we can mimic that in programming using arrays or collections of some kind, where we put stuff in and we just keep inserting stuff at the beginning of the list so everything else pushes down. It's called a stack. Here we're using the same kind of technique to keep track of which view is on top. And all we really have to do to return to where we came from, instead of connecting to it, is just pop. We pop the first item off the list, the first item. The counterpart to a stack is a queue, which is basically just a list where you put everybody at the end, and the first one in is the first one out. But here we wouldn't want to do that, because if we popped the first one, we'd be popping the master view controller. So here we use a stack. And so the reason they use the term pop is there's this stack of views, and Adam, I think you even had a three view stack for a while there. And when you go from the master view to the detail view to the extra detail view, this one pops, then this one pops, and you're back. So they can pop backwards like that. So we're going to take advantage of that. So let's add a couple of button bar items here. If I can find it. Where'd it go? There it is. And my first instinct is to say, let's change this from a custom identifier to a cancel, just like we did before, and then add another one for save. Just like we did before. But before, we connected those to segues. What we're going to do in this unit, I think it's a little simpler, is simply issue a command when you execute one of those, or when you tap one of those buttons, is simply execute a command that pushes, or pops back to the master view controller. So let's go into the assistant here so we can create some code. I'm going to tuck these underneath the detail item, because the save button is going to need access to the detail item, and I get a feeling that it needs to be defined first. I'm going to grab the cancel button first and control drag over to here and create an action so that we can save. Or pardon me. Pardon me? No, I'm not going to change them. I want an action. We're writing code to go back. Remember, actions are for code. Outlets if we want to change the name or do something like that. So I'm going to call this cancel tapped, and then immediately create one underneath it for save. Another action. And before I forget, I need to give credit where it's due. I found a new source, added it to my list of resources here. His name is Arled. That's all he goes by. I can't find a last name or anything like that. He's got a whole website and YouTube video recordings, and the guy talks faster than I do. And he's really good with these recordings because he pauses them. So whenever he types, he pauses them. And he types 5 or 6 lines and he says, okay, now we need to type this, and all of a sudden it's there. It's really cool. He talks really, really fast, and then he puts it in there, and the code just goes flying by. It's a good thing there's a pause button, but it's a really good recording. It also has a couple of interesting features in that he manually builds the storyboard. So he doesn't use the master view controller template that we had. He built this whole thing from scratch, basically. And it really makes a lot of sense. It's not that difficult to build from scratch, but I could see where, in the interest of time in this class, I want to just say, give me a master detailed view. We get the controllers, we get all the template code, etc. So it's a really good recording if you're looking for something to do over the holidays. Play some Christmas music on your stereo and watch a little Swift development. Okay, so back down here, inside here now we need to issue this command. We want to reference the navigation controller for the current view and simply pop the view controller, and while you're at it, animate it. So we want to do that for both of these because in either case, button cancel or button save, we want to do that. So I'm now going to switch from my assistant view back just to details view so I can see a little better here. And might as well hide that temporarily.
So if we had data validation, would we only run that if it's valid data in the save?
In the save, yeah. Because this pop, you can throw it in an if statement and say, I don't want to pop, and it doesn't go anywhere then. Right. So yeah, if you're doing validation, you could do all that inside a save, but for right now, I just want to make sure I can get back. So inside here, we want to get to the self navigation controller, and we want to pop, not to the root, we want to pop the view controller animated. And just put a lowercase true in here. What I found is that it keeps wanting to uppercase it on me, so I'm going to press escape and make sure it stays lowercase. The uppercase seems to be an error. And pardon me? Isn't working?
Mine isn't showing.
Or mine isn't even highlighting.
Is it inside? Are you inside the method? Between the curly brackets? And I don't know what type.
Sometimes my IntelliSense on Switch is just super slow.
Yep.
Mine isn't changing.
Sometimes if you do it clean, I know that's kind of silly.
While you're working on that, I do want to mention, also put it in the recording, that Justin discovered this weekend that there is a 6.1.1 version of Xcode. And the 6.1.1 version of Xcode messes up our configure view in the master view controller. Configure cell. This now requires an exclamation mark as well because it's now optional. Huh?
It was optional before, then they made it.
I know, somebody must have said that was a dumb idea, put it back. So that one's no longer required. So if you're running this at home and you've been keeping your, well, no, most of you don't have it at home, you must have a Mac at home. Yeah. Keeping it current, you may, with new additions, we've been seeing it all semester, as the new additions come out, they cause errors that weren't there before.
Hey, you should let your next semester students know that, well, oh wait, we got advanced next year. Otherwise I say, it's for sale.
It's for sale, your Mac's for sale, you need it next semester, right?
Yeah, after next semester.
After next semester, you can sell it. Okay. And Brittany has I shouldn't even put this into recording, but I'll do it anyways, a simulator, a virtual machine. She's running on Windows, in case you haven't noticed over there. But she's now starting to have issues with it as well. Whether it's her or the simulator is a different question. Okay, so that 6.11 is out there. I did install it in my laptop, and sure enough, I got an error on that line. An exclamation mark next to text label clears it up, and you're back and functioning again. All of the rest of this stuff I'm showing you today, assuming it works here, also worked in 6.11 because that's what I was developing on last night. Okay, so back to the detail view controller. All we did is put these pop controls in. We should be able to run. Shift to a bank and then test these, and sure enough, they pop. I think that's a little easier than dragging those segues that we were creating, and I did both.
So what kind of segue is that? Is that a push?
It is a push segue. So it's pushing, remember our stack
Yeah.
definition, it's pushing a new plate onto the stack. It's pushing a new bullet into the magazine. And it will be the first one that comes out. So this segue, his question is, what kind of segue is it? It was the default segue, which is a push segue. Remember, we changed it to modal.
So what happened to the back master button?
When I replaced it with something else, it went away.
Okay.
That's my guess. If it's still hiding behind there, I haven't seen it overlap. I haven't seen that problem. If it's there, it's not causing me any trouble.
Okay.
I think since we defined our own on the left-hand side, it removed it. It's my best guess. So now we can go back and forth. Now it's time to save changes. In order to save the changes, the first thing we have to do is get access to this managed object context. Remember, the object managed context is a scratch pad. When we brought data in using the fetched view controller in the master view, it was working with a managed object context that's in our app delegate. That app delegate was defined for us automatically with this template. The app delegate is what actually does all the managing of the managed object context. So we need a couple of commands. The first one points to the delegate file. Where is it? Then the second one says, okay, go into the delegate file and give me a reference to the managed object context. And I put an exclamation mark on it, said, I know it's there. A lot of the code you'll see will throw a couple of if statements in here and say, if it exists, well, why wouldn't my managed object context exist? If it doesn't, my program has some severe problems. Because I'm at save here. I'm trying to save a record. It must exist. If it doesn't, my program's crashing in the first place. So I'm not going through a lot of that stuff that you might see on the web to check to make sure it's there. So back to the detail view now. And they will often define these two commands inside of a special function that says, give me a pointer to the let's just put it in here. Now the last thing we want to do is pop. So push everything else, push the pop down and everything else comes above it. I'm going to let my delegate variable equal my application. Wasn't it application? UI application, shared application. Shared application and dot delegate. And this caused me a little grief because, again, I was translating from iOS 7. We have to cast this as a app delegate. If you don't cast it, it doesn't work. And then we can get at the context. You can call that whatever you want. I saw a lot of apps write it as MOC, the managed object context. Just a little variable name. Context equals the delegate dot managed object context. Exclamation mark to say I know it's there. Now we have access to the context. So now what do? Now we grab that detail item. Remember, there's still a detail item here that came in, right? Maybe. Right now it's coming in. Still today, I hope to do an insert record as well. And at that point, the detail item will be null. And if it's nil, then we do something different. But for right now, it's there. We've sent data from the master form to here. We know it works because we viewed it. Now what we want to do is take the current contents of the form and stuff them into the detail item and then save the data. So let's look at that process here real quick. First, check to see if there is a detail item. If let's just call it info equal the detail item. Okay, now this is an optional variable, so this is saying if it exists, then make info point to it and unwrap it because it's optional. Should be all we need. If it exists. Did I do that any different? I think I needed to put a type on it. I don't think the self is necessary. Info of bank info type. Let that equal the detail item.
Should be a right or wrong.
Pardon me?
Should be a constant or variable.
It doesn't matter because it's an object. So it's a pointer to the object. We can still change the contents inside. If we're going to change the pointer and make it point somewhere else, then it really needs to be a variable, but it should be a constant in this case. And after that's done, we should be able to just start transferring stuff in. So now I want to say that my info dot name is equal to text name or text bank name dot text. Key point, put semicolons on. Info dot state. Info dot city. Guess I could have done that first.
You have text bank name dot state.
Text city and text zip. And then we need a variable to point to the details, because remember in our,
Or what the date.
we're getting there, patience. Remember that's stored in a different place. Okay, so we can't get it from info because info is pointing to this. So what we need is a separate variable, we did this before, a separate variable to point to this, and then we can grab the data, or then we can fill this as well.
This is under info dot date dot seven.
We did it down here. Okay, so this says, give me the bank, give me a pointer to that relationship, the dates relationship. So up here, I'll call it detail or dates again, but this time I called it info instead of bank. Probably could have just changed this to bank, would have been just as good. So here I'm going to do the variable dates equals info.dates. And then dates dot acquiring institution equals whatever's in the text box. And things get a little more interesting with the actual close dates because they are stored as text, but in the database they're dates. So what we'll have to do is convert that to a date, my date type. Since I do have my date class in here, so let's do a quick review because I don't remember myself. We can instantiate a date either using that component or with a string. And we just have to specify this and then we will get a date. So we have to give it a string and its format. And then from there we can ask the NS for the NS date version. Isn't there an NS date in here? Yep. The as NS date is what we really want to stuff into the database. So we're going to kind of bypass, we're going to take the string, turn it into my date class, and then immediately turn it back into an NS date. So let's see if I can make that work. Dates.closeDate equals, I want to instantiate one of my date classes using the string from the text box. So that's this one. Date string is coming from text closed, dot text, and let's use the MMDD format. That will give me a date, but I can't stick a date, that's my class, into the closed date. I then have to as ns date that. And it looks like it's good. I think I'm going to copy that, just do the same thing for the update date. So that should now transfer all the stuff that was on the form back into the object. So we've gone the other direction.
You have to do that with, why don't you have to do that with the acquisition?
This one here?
Yeah.
That's
If there's anything in the, if they change the text box in the acquisition date, I mean, we're looking at this form, right? If they typed anything new in here, I want to save it. Don't I?
That's just a name of a date.
Did I convert the name? I didn't convert that one, did I? This is an acquiring institution? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an institution. Who acquired me? When did they close, and when's the last time this record's been updated? Just got to make sure you follow the types that are in your class, and you should be okay. All right, so we've transferred all that, but now the kicker is we need to save. So since we've transferred that, it's all sitting inside of the context. Because the details item came from the context. It's a pointer to a context item. So at this point, we just need to save those changes by creating an error variable that's required for our if statement here. But this says save the context. If there's an error, then print an error message. Kind of like our copy command we had before. So create a variable. This is outside of the if. You can call it whatever you want. Equals an NS error. And I think that was a question marked one. Yep. And initialize it to nil. When you put the error marker in this parenthesis, it has to be an address. And then finally, just in case there's an error, print line. Now it should be happy. No. Never fails. Thank you. So this should save it, and then we pop, just like we did before. But this is telling the scratch pad that we've made changes to the data, save it, which will also then hopefully update our grid. So quick test, should have done this earlier. Badger State Bank, let's change it to the Bucky State Bank. Save. Uh-oh.
I think your format is in MDY, not like.
Oh, the format's like the full month name. At least on the
Okay.
text box.
Yeah, you're right, you're right. Okay. So the format there, and this is something, by the way, you can tell I didn't test it, right? So back to the detail view, and the format of the date that we're getting is right? D comma y, y, y. Let's see if that helps. Is that the way we displayed them down here? Well, here we just two-stringed them. Okay, I'm cheated.
Might work.
And there's errors in the code.
I'm getting an error on the.
I'm glad yours worked. So let's pause the recording and figure out why mine didn't. Okay, what was wrong was I still had, and this is common, I wish I was enough into Swift enough to recognize it. When you get an error that stops on this app delegate, I mean, and my error was right here on this line. A very common occurrence of that, and I'm sure there are others, is that you've got a connection left over from something that you've deleted. So I was probably playing with this last week on this machine. I'm using a local copy, not the one that you have up on the server, so that's why I'm running into it. And so I had an extra connection and I had to go to the storyboard and I picked this form and I looked at all the connection inspectors and there was an extra one called test. So I must have had an object on my form that I was referring to or that was there that couldn't be tied back in again once I removed that. Now everything seems to work. I shouldn't say everything because I did take out some code. So let's put the code back in again. And this time do a quick test of everything. And the state box is not going to get very picky, so I have to leave the state because I think I'm filtering on Wisconsin, and if I don't put that in there, then that's going to, so I'll leave that one alone. Let's change the zip code to 1234. Let's change it to something real. Everything went bank. Everything went back. Stevens Point is here, and all the other data is saved. And what we haven't seen yet is this. If I press Control-Shift-Home, I'm back. I could even shut down my simulator, I believe. And when I run this, the data is not only persistent, but the changes should be persistent.
So it's actually saving to the database?
Yes. Because I just shut down my simulator. It's like turning off your iPhone. Because we did the context.save, the changes that I made are saved to the database, and when you run the application the next time, it's using that database. Remember, we wrote an if statement that says if the database doesn't exist, create it using my sample. But if it does exist, it bypasses that and leaves it alone. So now our data, remember that's why we're here in the first place using core data, is because we want persistent data where the data sticks. So now you could use your Unit 5 app and create an empty SQL-like database for it and start adding recipes, adding parts, adding assignments, whatever, and they will stick. Of course, you'll have to run them on the simulator or figure out a way to transfer them to your device. That's something I'm sure Sean will have you do next semester if you have an iOS device. So the downside of doing this, you have to have an iPhone, iPad, or there are actually some of the old, what are the players called? iPods. A lot of them had apps available as well, and those are cheap, and you can run your own apps on those if you're defined as a developer. All right, so we're saving changes. That's good. Next, we want to insert a new record. To insert a new record, we already have an add button. We're just going to use that one. Remember last time we took the coded add button out. In the master view controller, near the top, there is an add button that gets added right here. And in Unit 5, we took that out. And we also took out the insert new object. We don't need it. Okay. We could do the same thing, but let me show you the other way. Let's leave it. The good news is we don't need any of this code. We don't need any of the code because we're not going to insert dates, and that's what this is doing. However, this stuff, we may steal some of that stuff before we're done, because notice what it's doing is it's inserting a new object, entity for name, so it's inserting a new object. We might need to steal some of that code, but for right now, we don't need it. All we really want to do is push without sending anything. And what Wenderlich suggested, and I saw the same thing in the new resource, I forgot the guy's name already, is to add a second push segue. To do that, we go to the storyboard. And we come over here to the master view controller, and we grab that little master view, that's the view controller basically. And I'm going to control drag that over here and make a new push segue. And then there will be two pushed segues, but this one will have a different name. And the name doesn't even matter. So I'm going to click on that one. Are you the new one? Nope, that's the old one. So here's the new one. And we could say add bank or add info or add whatever you want. Add record. It's just a name. And in this case, the name doesn't matter. The other name, the show details, does matter, because remember in our code in the main master detail view here, I bet I didn't lock that in. Not that it matters. Anyways, I did lock in. Okay. But in the master detail view, remember our prepare for segue says if the segue identifier is show detail, then send the current record. I should be a little more specific here. Send a link to the current object in the context to the detail view so the detail view can show it. Okay. But now we've got a second segue, and what we want to do when we insert, where'd it go? Here it is. What we want to do when we insert is just send that, just make it do the segue. Using the name, I think we have to use the name to specify which segue we want sent. But since it's not show detail, then that prepare for segue skips over the if statement and just does the segue. So the line for actually sending it is perform segue with identifier and then sender. Sender is one of those placeholders. We probably could even put nil in there. Prepare, perform, segue with identifier. Our identifier, we now just called it add bank. So whatever you called it goes in here. And then the any object, I think we could probably put nil there, but I'm just going to put sender. Yeah, I'm just reusing this sender up here.
Could we use that add button that was added to the view did load?
We did. We are. This is tied because remember the view did load right here calls insert object. It's tied to insert object somewhere. Right there. It's tied to insert object. So yes, we are using this button to insert object, which basically does this prepare segue with identifier command. And what that should do when we run it is simply segue to the next form, push it again. But since we're not sending anything, nothing appears on the form. Now we have a nice empty form and we can type all kinds of stuff in here. However, our save is not yet ready to do a new record, so we need to do that next. This is probably a good time for a break, so let's take that break and then we'll come back and finish this up probably inside of half an hour.
All the way through.